Shalom, shalom friends. I'm Orita Vivi Cohen, a Momentum sister from Kfar Uriah, a small agricultural village, also known as a Moshav, between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. I was fortunate to join Momentum trip in May 2019. Yom HaAtzmaut reminds me of the miraculous establishment of the State of Israel. As a native-born Israeli, it is an opportunity to pause and feel gratitude for Israel and to remember not to take it for granted. Now, let's talk about the four goals of at Momentum: to connect to Jewish values, to engage with Israel, to take action, and to foster unity without uniformity. Each Momentum boost relates to one of these goals in order to inspire both us and our families. And while inspiration is wonderful, we know that taking action is critical to making a difference. First, we can take action with ourselves and our families, and then we can help transform our communities and the world. Momentum Boost Daily webinars cover a wide range of topics that helps us grow and motivate ourselves to be the best that we can be. During each of today's Momentum Boost, we'll be engaging with Israel in celebration of Yom HaAtzmaut. So let's get started. It's time for a boost. For this webinar, we are so excited to welcome muralist Hillel Smith. Hillel is an artist and a designer focused on reimagining Judaica with contemporary media. He has painted dynamic Jewish murals around the US, Israel, and Europe, and is the founder of the Jewish Street Art Festival. Seeing Hebrew as the visual glue that binds Jews together across time and space, he also teaches Jewish typography history using print as a lens for Jewish life and culture. Welcome, Hillel.
Welcome to everyone. Happy Yom HaAtzmaut. Happy birthday, Israel. Today we're going to be making some art. I hope everyone is really excited and is going to have a really good time. So first of all, let's talk. This is the kind of stuff that I do. As a muralist, I get the amazing opportunity to travel all around the world to paint large-scale Jewish mural projects. So this is a mural on the back of a bakery in Los Angeles. It says Hamotzi Lecha Min Haaretz, which I thought was really appropriate for a bakery. And these are the kinds of pieces that I think are really fun to add color and energy to Jewish neighborhoods and to all kinds of spaces, and to make these spaces very warm and inviting, and to create the sense of Jewish place and Jewish life. And one of the processes I use is called stenciling. And so with stencils, I can make smaller pieces like this. Here we have milk and honey. Here's another Theodore Herzl, In Tirtzu Ein Zo Agada, if you will, it is no dream. So also very timely pieces. And these kinds of pieces are done by using stencils. And so what are stencils? Stencils are really just a hole that has a shape in some kind of substrate. So substrate is a thing you're painting with. So here we have, this is just a regular sheet of office paper. And through this paper, I cut a little star. And so this is now a stencil. And the way a stencil works is you can take your stencil, put it up to a sheet of paper, put it up to a big wall if you're going to paint a big mural. And this allows you to pre-plan your design and then get your design onto the thing that you're going to paint with. And so when I travel around and do large scale mural projects, or even do smaller scale pieces like I just showed you, I'm working with spray paint. I'm outside, I have a big mask on. You know, now that these are very much in fashion, but I could say that I wore them before it was cool. And by using these things, I can make really cool stuff and put it outside. But this is definitely not a thing that you can do inside. And I also would recommend that if you are going to do this, make sure you have parental supervision and know what you're doing before you get into it. Have real safety equipment. These are not things that we're going to need today or we're going to do. We're going to figure out a way to do this, make cool spray paint style projects from the comfort of our own houses, set up in our dining room table just like me, and make some really cool Israel themed art. So first thing we're going to do is I want everyone to take a few minutes and to think about what you want to draw with. And just so that you have all your supplies handy, you want to make sure that you have something to draw with. So pencil, pen, marker, crayon, whatever works for you. You will want some kind of material to cut your stencil out of. So you can use regular office paper. This is totally fine. The thicker your stencil is, the easier it's going to be to paint with, but also the harder it is to cut. So regular office paper is super easy to cut. You can use this really, really well. But because it's kind of thin, it'll get a little bit soggy if you put too much paint on it, and also won't last that long. You can also use, if you have any cardstock lying around the house, this is definitely a step up. It's a little firmer. It'll be still pretty easy to cut, and also pretty lightweight. If you have cereal boxes, this is also a little bit harder to cut, but makes a really, really good, strong stencil. And so use whatever kind of materials that you have lying around. Here's another a high stencil I made earlier that I'll show you how to work with. Also, again, just made out of some leftover cardboard. The next thing we're going to need is something to cut with. So regular scissors is fine. If you have an X-Acto knife, or you have a parent that has an X-Acto knife, I'll show you how to use this as well. If you have a knife and you plan on using a knife, you should definitely have something to cut onto. Either a big sheet of cardboard, or ideally even a cutting mat like this. And then lastly, we're going to need something to paint onto. So again, any kind of material that will work that can hold liquid. So that could include anything like just more office paper. If you have watercolor paper or Bristol board from leftover art projects, kind of like this, that would be really excellent, but not required. And then once, this is some watercolor paper that I cut out of that, but then other materials could work really well also. And so I'll demo a couple fun materials later on in the class. And then we'll also need stuff to paint with. So ideally, like I said, because we're not using spray paint inside, there's some other materials that we can get. In the future, you can get this stuff. So this is spray ink. So there's, it's a little spritzer bottle, comes in a whole variety of different colors. You can find these usually at like Michael's or Joann's, or occasionally like in the art section at Target. If you don't have some of this, not a big deal. If you just have little spritzer bottles, these are from like the travel section at Target. I think I got these at CVS. All those stores should be hopefully open in your neighborhoods, and you should be able to get some of those. If you have an empty one of these, also could work. And we'll get to the actual painting part in a little bit. So just make sure that you have all your stuff handy. So now, when we're designing our stencils, you want to make sure that whatever your design has, you can be is easy to cut out and has some volume to it. So my little star is really great because there's a lot of space to have a cool color design into it. If you want to write something, so let's say we want to write Israel. Let me try and angle this down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So if I want to write Israel, or actually, let's go a little faster. So if I just have a chai, the problem with this, so I have some nice block letters. The problem with this is the letters aren't very thick, and so there's nothing to put paint through. So you always want to make sure for a stencil project that your letters have a lot of heft to them, that you can, there's a lot of area that you can fill with color. So this is definitely a good way to start. So when you think about making bubble letters, you can start by just blocking in the skeleton and the bones of your letters, and then go through and fill it out. So here I'm just blocking in the letters, making them a little bit thicker. And so once you have some space that you can actually fill in and see through, that way all these bigger, thicker lines will hold the color. I would recommend that when you're designing, that you make sure to have your design more or less centered inside the whatever paper or cardboard that you're cutting out of, so that you have a lot of nice room to hold it around. And make your letters or your designs kind of thick and chunky. If you want to make a khamsa, that would be really excellent. And so think about what really fun Israel-themed designs and materials and concepts you can come up with. And so with that, let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so once, and don't worry, we're gonna have a few minute break for everyone to design and cut. I'm just gonna quickly talk everybody through it so that you can have some time to understand what's going on and then go off on your own for a few minutes to try it yourself. So once you have your design and you're ready to cut it out, if you're using a scissors, you can just cut from the outside of the page, go in, follow your lines as best you can. And great, so now I have one of my letters and I also have my substrate. And see, because I cut from the outside, this is now disconnected. That's totally fine. This is a stencil. This is not finished art. This is the process that we're using to make the art. And so all I have to do now is get some tape, tape the whole stencil back together, and now it's good as new. And really ready to go. I would just cut this out. I can, again, just continue cutting here. If you don't want to cut from the outside and don't want to have to deal with tape, you can make a little hole like pinprick like that, start cutting from the inside and cut your letter out that way. That way I can cut out my letter. If you want to use an X-Acto knife, that's also a really good way to cut your stencil out from the inside, keeping the outside intact. When you use a knife, you always want to remember, this is the grip. So you want to hold it on the grip like you are taught to hold a pencil with your thumb, middle finger, and your forefinger on top. The diagonal side is the blade. The blade always goes down. You want to make sure that you're holding the knife at about a 45-degree angle from the cutting mat. And when you're cutting, you don't want to cut like this with your fingers. You want to cut with your whole arm. And you want to make big, long strokes all the way across. You also want to hold your paper, but on this side, because if I'm holding like this and I cut this way, I can run into my fingers. So you want to make sure you're holding on the other side. And then I can cut out my stencil in nice individual strokes. Always try to cut down. Don't try to cut up. You lose power that way. And so just continue cutting, turning the paper until you've made it all the way around your design. And voila, now we have our stencil cut out. But remember, there are two different ways to do a stencil. You can keep the outside part. So if I do this, you can kind of see my shirt through the stencil. If I use this as my stencil, I'm going to have a white background and chai that's going to be in color. Or if you decide that you want to keep, the inside piece instead of the outside piece, or if for some reason you had a little accident and you ruined the outside of the stencil, you can keep the inside piece. And if you use this as your stencil, you have what's called a reverse stencil. And if you put this here and you put paint around it, now you're going to have a colored background with a white design. And both of those ways are really cool to go with. I showed you paper that you can different kinds of paper that you can use for this activity. Another thing that you can use is fabric. So I got a bunch of these cloth napkins at Target, and see if I can hold this far enough back so you can see. This is now a challah cover, or it was a demo for a challah cover, but you can make your own challah covers at home. And so if we notice on the top, this is a regular stencil where I cut the word Shabbat Shalom out of the paper and then put color through it. But then I save those pieces. You can also do it the other way. So have your reverse stencil so that Shalom is white and the background is in color. So with that, I'm going to let everybody draw and cut give everybody about 5 minutes. And for anybody who is already finished or just wants to see more cool stuff, we're going to show a bunch of slides of work that I just did in Jerusalem this past October. So Allison, please show some stuff. So back in October was the Jerusalem Biennale. So the Jerusalem Biennale is a big citywide art festival that happens every 2 years all over Jerusalem. It's a really, really cool program. And I was running a mural festival that brought Jewish artists from all over the world to Israel to paint large-scale mural projects in a few locations around the city. So it was a really, really fun thing. I got to work with 10 other artists making all this art. And so let's see some of it. All right, so let's go next. So this is me working on a huge mural that's at First Station in Jerusalem. You can see this is me on the thing on the concert stage. Yeah, so let's go next. This is the full mural, so Aleph Bet Gimel, which I thought would be a really fun thing just to have out there. If you look very closely, the back leg of the Aleph is another Hey, so it kind of is Ahava, which I wanted to have a nice play on that. And then some of the other artists. All right, let's go next. This is Solomon Souza, who did one of the pieces there. You might recognize his work. He paints all over Israel. He is very prolific. So if you go next, you'll see one of his pieces at Machne Yehuda. So he did most of the doors that cover all of the stores in the shuk. So if you go there at night, it is completely covered in art. It's really, really amazing. Next is Shlomi Hayun. So he paints these huge chamsas all around. He's based in Los Angeles, paints really all around the world, really cool guy. So next is the full finished mural that he did. Super, super bright colors, really, really fun stuff. Next is a piece by Lenore Mizrachi. Her family is Syrian, and so her grandparents spoke Arabic and Judeo-Arabic. And so this is a piece she did in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. If you go next, you'll see a piece by Yitzchak Muli. Oh, that's her working on her piece, working with really crazy color, vibrant paint. Next is a piece by Yitzchak Muli. He's based in New York. Also really, really vibrant stuff. Next is a piece not in Israel, but a really powerful piece he did in New Jersey after the shootings there in Jersey City around Hanukkah time, where he got different artists from all over New Jersey to do stuff there. Here's a couple Israeli artists. So next is Judy Kopelman. She's based in Tel Aviv. You can see she's working with large-scale stencils, making really, really cool work all around in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and Haifa. She did a whole big project on the port there. So yeah, really amazing person to know. Next is that's the full train car that she did. So First Station is an old train station that was built in Israel by the Ottomans in the 1890s, I think. That was recently turned into this whole amazing walkable space for cafes and concerts and activities and kid spaces, and there's a carousel. And so this whole project and this whole festival is about bringing light and color and amazing new life to old spaces, which is really everything the Foundation of Israel is about. Next is a piece that she did. She did a whole series of pieces taking different verses from the Torah and putting a fun contemporary spin on it. So this is a piece that's in Jerusalem. So the verse is from Genesis, Lo tov hayot adam le'vado. It's not good for a person to be alone, and has a bunch of teenagers on cell phones. And she did a lot of really kind of cheeky pieces like this, which I think are hilarious and amazing, and also so emblematic of Israel, of a place that has this kind of communal reference point, and this shared identity that that everyone knows and loves. Next is a piece by Dan Groover. He really is like the I don't know, grandfather, I guess, of real Jewish street art in Israel. So next is a piece that he did across the street from the Shuk, maybe years and years and years ago. I think this piece is like from the early 2000s. So here's all these people who come to Israel, take the skill sets that they have, bring it out and try to figure out how you take this, bring a new art form to ancient text, to an old city, and make an old city in an old place very new and bright and exciting, very modern. Next is a piece by Itamar Polog, or it goes by a street art name Fallujah. So he goes around, he loves working with calligraphy. And so here's a piece that he did on an abandoned army base in the Golan, taking, if you look, there's not actual letters in there, but he took strokes of Hebrew letters, strokes of Arabic letters, and put this all together to make this really beautiful piece about peace and cooperation and understanding. He's done a lot of work. He used to be based in Tel Aviv, so he has a ton of stuff all around Tel Aviv. Really, really great guy to know and paint with. A really fun time. And just one more piece before we go back to the actual painting part. After we finished painting all of the stuff at First Station, we went to Chutzot HaYotzer, the artist colony, which is across the street from Jaffa Gate. They have, which is also a really, really cool space for Jewish art, and have all these amazingly high-skilled artisans and craftspeople working in silver and glass and contemporary art. This project was put together by Kol Ha'ot, which is an art gallery that's right there that focuses very much on contemporary Jewish art. And so they have these air conditioning units on the back of the building that were blocked by these big grates. And so there were 7 grates. So we thought, what better thing to put here than doing something for the 7 days of creation, because that's what this whole artist colony is about creation. And so each 7 different artists painted 1 day of creation. So starting at the top, I did day 1, and then getting this whole other team of artists to work on this piece together, just across the street from the old city wall. So bringing something that's super ancient next to something that's super modern. And this was a project that meant a lot to me, and it's this combination of taking old things and new things and putting it all together that is what draws me to making Jewish street art and putting all that stuff together. So, and with that, hopefully everyone has finished all of their drawing and cutting. Let's get back to drawing. This is another piece at the Schechter Institute, which is across the street from the Israel Museum, where 9 different artists came and did large-scale typography and calligraphy and all kinds of stuff on this giant wall that's out there, taking some of the best calligraphers in Israel, some of whom had never done any kind of mural work before at all, and making this like almost tagged graffiti wall, but with biblical texts, which this wall is on the backside of a Beit Midrash. We thought that'd be a really, really fun thing to do. So, all right, let's get back to painting. Okay, so we should all have our stencils now, however we wanted them to be. I have my Achai stencil that I put together very quickly while we were on break. I also have my letters, and let's demo how some of this stuff works. So take our substrate, our clean sheet of paper, and all of these different processes work more or less the same. So I can take my stencil, put my stencil down. You want to make sure that your stencil lies as flat on your paper as possible. And so if you see it, it might be sticking up a little bit. You can try to bend it with your fingers just to get it nice and flat. Another cool trick is if you have little things like little nuts and bolts, you can put those down. This is especially important if you're working with regular office paper, to have these little nuts and bolts so that the paper doesn't fly off or your stencil doesn't fly off the paper when you're spraying. So I'm just going to put a few of these down to make it stay flat. If you don't have these, you can also take a little tape and then make a little roll with your tape and then stick this on the back and get it to stay nice and flush. And so the process of all this is the same, whether you're using spray ink or if we are trying to pretend and use something like pomegranate juice, any kind of juice that has a really dark, vibrant color and doesn't have little particles in it could work for this. So pomegranate juice, grape juice, beet juice has a beautiful purple color. If you have leftover wine, that could work. Another thing, and if you don't even have that, you just have an empty spritzer bottle with, and you have some food coloring. So take your bottle, you only want to put in maybe about a quarter to a half inch of water in there. You don't want to put in more than that because the more water you have, the more diluted the food coloring is going to be and the more food coloring you're going to need to make the color that you want. So I'm going to I have my little half inch or quarter inch of water. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, let's put in a bunch of drops to make a nice, really dark blue color. Remember, the more drops you put in, the darker your paint is your paint is going to be. And so with this, if you spray too close, you're going to get paint underneath your stencil. So you want to be a little bit higher up. Spray a couple times till it comes out. And so with that, we can get a super cool spray paint effect. And so what else can we do with this? So we have painting on paper. And then if we wanted to demo how it's going to work the other way with our reverse stencil. So I can put my reverse stencil here. Make sure all my letters are facing the right way. Put some bolts down. See how this is sticking up a little bit, so it's really important that I have these there. And let's see if we can do a fade. So I'm going to take, here's my pomegranate juice. Oh, this is spraying a lot nicer than the blue. So the more absorbent your paper is, so watercolor paper is a lot more absorbent than this, but we can also have our high in purple. So what are other things that you can paint? So I showed the challah cover. You can also paint, you can take a t-shirt. You can paint on your t-shirt, which would be, I think, really fun. You can also paint on food, because if you're using edible food, edible products like food coloring or pomegranate juice or other kinds of juices, you can paint onto food. So let's take, so I'm going to take bread. You can also do this with, I'm sure it's a little after Pesach, you might have a lot of this stuff left over. So we can take some bread. This was a little stuck. And then you can also use edges to make, my blue is not working. All right, let's switch back to pomegranate. You can use your edges to mask off some nice stuff. And with that, we can make a flag on toast. And so these are all projects that you can do back at home all the time, anytime that you want. So I hope that this is all really fun activities for you. And I would love for you to share some projects that you worked on. You can find me online. So again, my name is Hillel Smith. You can find me my website. My email is on there. You can find me on Instagram. I'd love to see the kinds of projects that you came up with. So again, happy Yom HaAtzmaut, happy birthday to Israel, and have a great rest of your day.